It's a great honor to show this film here, considering the relationship that Laszlo and Vilmos had with this festival. Also, it's sort of perfect following upon, if you were in the last panel with Janusz, following upon his panel, many of the questions and observations that you made and he made are answered and dealt with in this film. I'm a cinematographer and director, mostly a cinematographer. You know my work, a couple Emmy nominations, The Life of Judy Garland, 4 Minutes. I did some of the, some important work on the film Chicago. So you've seen my work around. Right now I'm shooting and directing the television series Ghost Whisperer. This film is about 2 guys I really love and who had a great influence and caused me to become a cinematographer, to become a filmmaker. Their films influenced Janusz Kaminski and so many people in this world. And it's not just the artistry and the beauty of their cinematography, it's the storytelling. They were amazing storytellers. And this is you're going to want to see this again and again, and people have really loved this film. We're presenting a preview copy in DVD today, but this film is in 35mm, and you're going to really, really enjoy it. And come back, tell people about it. We qualified this film for the Academy Awards last week. A working version of this film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year. It was a labor of love by so many people. Hundreds of people, literally, helped make this film in Hollywood and in Budapest. And we're very proud of it. So enjoy it. We'll have a great Q&A afterwards. Bob Fisher, I got to tell you a story first before we start. This was a long 22-year dream. 22 years to get this on the screen. And in December 2006, I was sitting in a seminar with Laszlo and Vilmos. Laszlo was on one side of me, and Bob Fisher was on the other. And I suddenly realized that Laszlo, we were all mortal. And I realized Laszlo didn't have a lot of time left. And he got up and went on stage to do his seminar. And I turned to Bob Fisher, and Bob Fisher says, "When are you going to do that film?" So thank you, Bob.
Thank you. That was, God, I can't see this without getting all teary-eyed and all choked up. They were special people. Jim, before anybody asks, I want to let everybody ask questions. How did you first meet Laszlo and Vilmos? Missed that here.
Well, this film's not about me, but
I know,
they affected thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, really. I first became aware of Laszlo Kovacs from the movie Hell's Angels on Wheels. I was a little kid, and I got in a lot of trouble on my bicycle with my friends wrecking things afterwards. And I first became aware, that was a period when also, like 12 years old, becoming aware of movies and cinematography, but also how they were made, and all this camera work, there's something there. Later, after I took my own cross-country motorcycle trip, I'd never seen Easy Rider. And my parents said, before you go on that cross-country motorcycle trip, you have to cut your hair. So, very incongruous in 1971, having short hair, but I did it for them. Later, I decided, I was trained in art and fine arts, and I've been making little films, and I decided to, when my own father passed away, I decided, I really want to make films. So I chucked my teaching job at the university and joined the circus, and went to the American Film Institute. And there I met Laszlo Kovacs. And he showed us Paper Moon and did a talk-through, like a commentary we would have on a DVD today. And I met his young wife, Audrey Kovacs, the same day. And then we did a lighting workshop, and I worked on his crew that day. And then later that year, I was introduced to Vilmos Zsigmond because I was kind of old to be kind of a student and starting a new career. And I was given an internship by the AFI with Vilmos Zsigmond on The Witches of Eastwick, and I basically carried a case around. So here's an ex-college professor, albeit a young one, but carrying Latin coffee for Vilmos, but sometimes for Sharon, Jack, and Susan. And I learned so much, being his shadow and watching him. And he freely gave information and taught everyone around him. And I noticed he learned from everyone else. And one day there was a mistake. They were using a video tap, and there was a mistake. the assistant threw a shadow on Michelle Pfeiffer in an elevator, very tight shot, and it was a oneer, there was no coverage. And I said to the operator, Harold, there's a shadow. Kenny threw a shadow on Michelle. And he said, blankety blank, don't bother me, kid. So I ran over to Vilmos and I said, Vilmos, there's a shadow on Michelle. And they were behind that day, and it was not a happy day. And Vilmos actually got a little short with me. What do you mean there was a shadow? So then the whole set turned around and looked at me. And I thought, boy, I'm on a plane ticket home tomorrow. And he said, what happened? And I said, Kenny backed up. He backed up into the tweenie, threw a shadow on Michelle. And she's supposed to look like an angel in this shot. So he said, George, we have to do it again. And the whole set groaned, and boy, it just felt this big. But print it! I want everyone to see that shot tomorrow.
It was Vilmos, not you, right?
Vilmos, and I was like, oh shit. So they did the shot again. The next day at Dailies, the whole crew used to go to Dailies, which we don't do today, which we should. And that shot came up, and I just was convinced I hadn't seen that shadow. And it was there, and Vilmos turned around and said, thank you, Jimmy. Anytime you have something to say, you tell me. And that's the kind of person he is, you see. You know. And then George Miller and Vilmos hired me on the other movie, and I got my first little tiny credit, shooting some inserts, bowls of fruit rotting and whatnot. But then I found out that Laszlo and Vilmos gave this opportunity to hundreds of people. And they taught workshops, literally hundreds of workshops all over the world, freely giving their knowledge and sharing what they learned, because their teachers told them, when you become successful, you share your knowledge. We're on this earth for such a short time. You know, you have to follow your dreams and do with it what you can. And as Sharon Stone said, and don't be afraid of being the very best that you can. So that's why
there was also an event, a lunch event. Tell them about that on that movie when you were interning.
Oh, that was at the end of the movie, which was 105 days. We were way over schedule. Vilmos suddenly announces to the whole giant set at Warner Brothers, we're having a long lunch today. I mean, you just don't do that in any movie. And George Miller said, why? He said, today's the 30th anniversary of the Hungarian Revolution. We're having a long lunch. And so suddenly, in the courtyard of the location, some Hungarians showed up. They had tables, picnic, wine, food. Laszlo Kovacs came in. And this is the first time I saw the two men together. And they presided over the celebration for the friends and family they lost in the revolution. And the fact, and saying, it's too bad our country will never be free again. This is in 1986, just before the Berlin Wall fell, before communism collapsed. So I thought to myself, look at these, what a story. And I thought, it's such a great story, I'd love to make a documentary about that. But then I was a poor student, didn't have any connections and money, and I said, it's so good, somebody will make it someday. And 22 years went by, and nobody had made the film. So I did.
What was their reaction when you told them you wanted to do it?
Well, it turned out that there had been several attempts, probably 4 or 5 attempts to make it. I'm not sure. Yeah, you know, that's a little irritating as a director to find out there's these other interviews sitting around on the shelf. They said, why didn't you share them? But in any case, when I proposed it to them, they jumped at it because I think they both knew me, first of all, but also they wanted a cinematographer to make the film. I think that made it. There's many other issues, many other things dealt with artistically in this film. And if you notice, you know, we're not saying the cinematographers make the movie. We make the image, sure. But as Vilmos said, there's many hands that hold the hand that's holding the brush. And in an ideal film, you find your great collaborator, you find your Robert Altman or your Steve Spielberg to work with. Cinematographers are not technicians. Cinematographers are performers in the same way the actors are performers. We're visual performance artists. And we use, you know, an endless bag of tricks to create our images. And it's all at the service of the story. And it's just to find those collaborators, your director, your actors, your production designers, to make that film. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, obviously. The other thing I want to get back to is, you know, look at the films they made, the influence they have, how pertinent those films are today. And the Deer Hunter, pretty much out of today's headlines, wouldn't you say?